Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. As we get started with our program, I want to begin with a brief video to set the stage for the rest of our morning.
Most people who receive an education can agree with me that arts is a critical pillar of education. For me, as a dance choreographer, the skills of mathematics and geometry go hand in hand with my daily work. As an entrepreneur, the skills of business and economics create actual success in my business. And for other subjects and other people, I can assure you that mathematicians are also composers of music, and English majors also create lyrics for songs. So it is without a doubt that the arts enriches all walks of life.
Good morning and welcome to the release of the Nation's Report Card 2016 Arts. We're grateful to be here at the John F. Kennedy Center for the Performing Arts, which has shown a long-standing exemplary commitment to the arts and arts education. I want to thank them for hosting us today. And many thanks to everyone here in attendance at the Kennedy Center and everyone who's joining via our webcast. I'm Terry Mazzani, President and CEO of the Chicago Community Trust, one of the nation's largest community foundations and steadfast committed to arts education in the Chicago public schools. We have played an important role from an initial survey 15 years ago looking at disparities in access to now creating opportunities for every student in Chicago to enjoy all of the disciplines of arts education. In addition, I'm one of the founding board members of Chi Arts, the Chicago High School for the Performing Arts, that provides a highest level of arts education for young people to be able to excel in their career and pursuits of the arts. It's very important that we have this vital role of creativity, innovation, and imagination in our communities. Today, I wear the hat of Chair of the National Assessment Governing Board, an independent, nonpartisan board whose members include governors, state legislators, local and state school officials, educators, business representatives, and members of the general public. Congress created the 26-member board in 1988 to oversee and set policy for the National Assessment of Educational Progress, or NAEP, also known as the Nation's Report Card. NAEP shows us that arts can indeed be assessed, and it provides us with valuable objective data on 8th graders' knowledge of music and visual arts. In fact, the Nation's Report Card 2016 Arts is the only source of nationally represented data that measures these skills. Before we begin, let me review the schedule of our program. First, we will present results from the 2016 NAEP Arts Assessment with a brief question and answer session. Then we will see a video highlighting the contextual data from the arts reports. And finally, we will see 4 videos of arts programs across the country that are blending arts with academics to enrich their students' educational experiences. And we'll have a moderated question and answer session with representatives from those schools. During the event today, we encourage you to join our ongoing conversation on Twitter using the hashtag NAEP, N-A-E-P. Now it is my pleasure to introduce Dr. Peggy Carr to present the results of the 2016 NAEP Arts Assessment. Dr. Carr is the Acting Commissioner of the National Center for Education Statistics, or NCES. She is one of the nation's foremost experts on student assessment, having guided NAEP assessment for many years, and is a wonderful colleague that we work with at the National Governing Board. Also on stage is our event moderator, Dr. Jonathan Katz, who will moderate the question and answer session on the arts data, as well as the second half of the program. Dr. Katz is the strategic advisor for the Innovation Collaborative and will lead us through the rest of the event, lending his perspective to the discussion that will occur in the second half of our event today. Before Dr. Carr presents the data, she has a brief special multimedia carousel to share with you.
Pleased to be here today to release the Grade 8 results from the National Assessment of Educational Progress Arts Assessment here at the John F. Kennedy Center for the Performing Arts. Before I go into my presentation, I want to recognize this beautiful art that you just saw, both on the screen and outside before you entered the room. These works of art were created by our 8th grade students as part of our arts assessment. Let's see, you saw self-portraits, you saw collages, and yes, those whisper boxes that were designed to hold voices. If you didn't see them, I asked you to go back as you leave and appreciate the time and effort that students put into creating these wonderful, beautiful pieces of art. You also heard music just now. Performances we recorded from the past in our 1997 arts assessment, our first music arts assessment. I wanted you to sort of hear and share the sort of rich history of this assessment. And yes, it is unique. It's the first and only NAEP assessment of what students know and can do in the visual arts and music. The design and content of the arts assessment was developed by a committee of practicing artists, art educators, and members of the artistic organizations who understand that throughout students' lives, they will draw from artistic experience and knowledge as a means of understanding what happens inside and outside their own skin as they use, just similarly as they use mathematical, scientific, historic, and other frameworks to understand their world. So let's begin with a brief review of the methodology used in this assessment and better understand the students' experience and, yes, how we evaluated performance in this assessment. In 2016, the NAEP Arts Assessment included a nationally representative sample of 8,800 8th grade students who were assessed in either music or visual arts. The arts assessment asked students to observe, describe, analyze, and evaluate works of arts in music and the visual arts. Additionally, students were asked to create their own original pieces in visual arts that was a component of this assessment. In music, we report students' performance on responding questions. Specifically, students were asked to analyze the element and structure of music, compare and contrast various musical styles, and make critical judgments about technical and expressive qualities of musical performances and compositions. The performance was then placed on a 300-point scale. In visual arts, students were asked to complete both responding and creating questions. Responding questions ask students to respond to content, form, context, and aesthetics. And they were asked to describe relationships between form and context, form in the meaning or function, and critical/analytical models. Visual arts creating questions ask students to create subjects, themes, and ideas that reflect knowledge and understanding of context, values, and aesthetics. They were asked to create preliminary or formative ideas such as sketches before final execution, and to create a product that reflects ongoing thoughts, actions, and new directions. Creating questions and visual arts, well, that is a unique part of our arts assessment, and they are reported on an average creating task scale, one that goes from 0 to 100%. Next, I will take you through specific examples from both the music and the visual arts, a part of our assessment. I think it's necessary for you to understand how the arts was conceptualized and operationalized in our program. Let's begin with a responding music question. For this question, students played a simple piece of music and asked to identify the instrument played in the piece. Let's play a snippet of this piece, Rhapsody in Blue, and see if you can choose the correct answer. Of 8th grade students selected the correct answer, D, clarinet. Here's another example of a responding question, but in the visual arts discipline. In this responding visual arts question, students were shown 2 self-portraits and asked to identify technical similarities between the two. Here's the first portrait, drawn by Katie Kowitz. Here's the second, drawn by Egon Schula. Again, students were asked to describe a technical similarity between the 2 self-portraits. The correct answer is choice B. Both works combine loose gestural lines and careful drawing. About 41% of the 8th grade students got this question correct. Finally, let's discuss a creating question in visual arts. There are 4 levels of scoring for a create a self-portrait task. Sufficient, uneven, minimal, and insufficient. For the first task that I will show you in just a moment, sufficient is defined as having clear and specific observations and compositional elements that are skillfully and purposefully incorporated. We're going to look now at some examples of the 4 rating levels that I just described. Here's an example of sufficient, where 3% of students scored. You can think of sufficient as full credit. This student's response scores sufficient because it shows purposeful use of compositional elements and sensitive use of materials. The work also shows both skillful use of proportion, color, and lines, and is fully developed and individualized. For example, the student has used color very selectively so that it emphasizes and creates contrast between specific parts of her portrait. The student commented in her self-evaluation that she sought to show both sorrow and faith in her self-portrait. 26% of students who scored uneven had responses that made some specific observations. They sometimes employed pertinent compositional elements, gave attention to details such as the facial features to convey expression. and they sometimes effectively use materials to communicate. However, uneven works are typically somewhat inconsistent and incomplete in parts. This artist gives her work some individuality by her vivid use of color, facial expressions, and the symbols she has incorporated in her jewelry. And behind the works of art, you'll see some indications there. However, these elements seem inconsistent, and they're lacking in deliberation and they distract, quite honestly, from the overall effect. For example, somewhat careless placement of background elements you'll see here, and the lack of clarity of some of the other elements. As with 59% of the students who scored at the minimal level, in this self-portrait, efforts at specific observations are apparent and relatively minimal. Compositional successes may seem more accidental than deliberate, and use of materials is unskilled. For example, this student has chosen to emphasize only the eyes and the mouth with color. However, the student lacks the skill to make the choice distinctive enough to convey this message. Most self-portraits at the insufficient level, accounting for 11% of eighth graders, were so schematic as to convey very little or nothing about the artist. Like this one, they showed unspecific observations, little awareness of composition, and highly unskilled use of materials. So now I've given you a taste of what the actual assessment looks like and what the students experience. I want to now turn to the findings from this 2016 unique art assessment. Remember that music and visual arts are two distinct disciplines and they're not combined into a single score. So I'm going to share with you results that are separate for each area, and they cannot technically be compared. Student performance on the NAEP Arts Assessment is reported on an average scale of 0 to 300 for each discipline. That, of course, is music and visual arts. When discussing performance, I will only discuss changes that are statistically significant. Those changes will be indicated by an asterisk. As you can see here, the average scale score in music in 2016 is 147. While that score is numerically smaller than the 150 in 2008, that change is not statistically different. Scores are also reported using percentiles to show results for students performing at lower 10th and 25th percentiles, middle, the 50th percentile, and higher levels, the 75th and the 90th percentiles. Again, you see that scores are numerically down across these percentiles, but none of these changes are statistically different. Now let's look at performance for the visual arts. And what you'll see here is that the average scores for the visual arts was 149. This is not different from the 150 that we reported in 2008. When you look at the performance distribution, you see our first asterisk, and that is on the 90th percentile indicated at the top. And this indicates that our highest performing students, on average, scored lower in 2016 than was the case in 2008. Something else that we examine in NAEP are achievement gaps between groups of students. I'm going to show you those results next. Here we're looking at the white Hispanic achievement gap in music. The two dark blue circles at the bottom of the figure indicate the gap in student performance. The asterisk on the number in the circle indicates a statistically significant difference from 2016. In 2016, White students performed 23 points higher than Hispanic students. This 23-point gap is narrower than the 32-point gap in 2008, again, as indicated by the asterisk. You'll also notice that the narrowing of the gap is driven by the improved performance of Hispanic students with an average score of 135 in 2016, higher than 129, I should say, in 2008. It is a very similar story in the visual arts. The 19-point gap in 2016 is narrower than the 26-point gap reported in 2008. While not shown here, the Black-white achievement gap did not change in 2016 in either music or visual arts as compared to 2008. This slide shows the gap between Asian Pacific Islanders and white students. In 2016, there was no achievement gap between white and Asian Pacific Islander students in music, no change in the size of the gap in comparison to 2008. While there was no achievement gap between white and Asian Pacific Islanders in music in 2016, as was the case in 2008, in the visual arts, an 8-point achievement gap appeared between the two groups of students in 2016. What about gender gaps? Girls had higher average scores than boys in both music and the visual arts in 2016, as was the case in 2008. Boys' music responding average score decreased in 2016 in comparison to the previous assessment year. This figure shows the 2016 music responding score by students' race, ethnicity, and eligibility for the National School Lunch Program. For example, white students had an average score of 158 in 2016. Note that the average score for white students was higher than the average score for Black, Hispanic, and students of 2 or more races, but not different from the average score for Asian Pacific Islanders students. Continuing our look at student groups, students who were not eligible for the National School Lunch Program had higher average scores than students who were eligible. In the visual arts, the 2016 responding scores by students' race, ethnicity, and eligibility for the National School Lunch Program are shown here. White students had an average score of 158 in 2016. Note that the average score for white students was higher than the average score, again, for Black students, Hispanic students, and Asian Pacific Islanders, but not different from the average score for students who were from 2 or more races. Students who were not eligible for the National School Lunch Program had higher average scores than students who were eligible for the program. As with every assessment NAEP administers, contextual questions were asked of all students who participated in the arts assessment. We also asked school personnel to complete a survey questionnaire if they were included in the sample. These questions will help create a more complete picture for you of the educational environment and the culture. This question asks students about course taking in music and visual arts. As we see here, the percentage of students taking music or arts courses in school did not change in 2016 compared to the previous assessment year. 63% of students were taking a music course in 2016 compared to 64% in 2008. 42% of students answered that they had taken or were taking an art course in 2016 compared to just 45% in 2008. This next question looks at the participation of students in arts activities in school. On the left, you see the percentage of students who said they play in the school band in 2016. That was 17%. This was not different in comparison to 2008 when we asked this question. On the right, in visual arts, the percentage of students answering yes to the question, do you or your teacher save your artwork in a portfolio, declined by 5 points in 2016 to 49% in comparison to 54% in 2008. The percentages of students engaging in some arts activities outside of school have declined in 2016 in comparison to the previous assessment year. 67% of students listened to a musical performance in a theater in 2016 compared to 72% in 2008, a 5-point decline. And in the visual arts, 13% of the students took an art class not for schoolwork in 2016 compared to 16% in 2008. If you recall in a slide that I showed you earlier, there are gender gaps. There is a gender gap in music, and girls outperform boys by 15 points. In this slide, what you'll see is that finding at the top in the blue bar across the slide. And then we have questions that will help you understand and contextualize that performance gap. These particular items look at behaviors and attitudes towards music. What you see in most cases is that females identify with these activities at a higher rate than males. More girls than boys agree that they have musical talent, talk with family members and friends about music, and played an instrument not for schoolwork. In NAEP, we also report data by region of the country as defined by the census. In the visual arts, students in the Northeast had an average score of 160, outperforming their peers in the South, the Midwest, and the West. This slide shows the percentage of students' engagement in the visual arts by the regions. More students in the Northeast took an art course, save artwork in a portfolio compared to students in the Midwest, in the South, and the West. In addition, students in the Northeast were more likely to have access to a full-time visual arts teacher. And they lived in a state or district with a visual arts curriculum. And this is in comparison to their Midwest and West counterparts. The results of this assessment can be found online at thenationsreportcard.gov. Also, you can follow NAEP on Facebook at the National Assessment of Educational Progress and on Twitter at NAEP_NCES. In closing, I would like to thank all of the students and the teachers and the schools that volunteered their time to participate in this arts assessment. Their efforts allow us to better understand the special benefits of learning that only the arts can provide. How to use different senses, make decisions, learn from mistakes, and work well with others. I want to thank you. Here's my favorite piece.
We'll now open the floor for questions for Dr. Carr on the results. If you have a question, please approach the microphone, provide your name, organization, and your question.
Hi, Dr. Carr. Thank you very much. I'm Mike Blakesley from the National Association for Music Education. As I recall, in the last couple of NAEPs, there was data not only that you shared with us that course taking in music was unchanged, but the data drilled down to the frequency of instruction that those children had. Can you speak to, has that changed at all? Because in the past, it was quite evident that sometimes the fact that a child took a course meant one time a week, and sometimes it meant far more frequently.
Well, it's a good question, and I'm happy to say that we do have those data, although I don't have them here with me.
Okay.
Our NAEP Data Explorer, which just gives me an opportunity to put a plug for that, will allow you to drill down at the level that you are inquiring.
Great, thank you very much.
More questions? How are the schools selected for the sampling?
Schools were randomly selected from their proportional representation across the nation. And once we identified those schools, we drilled down and got representative samples within the schools. No one knew who was going to take visual arts or the music assessment, so it was all random. And students volunteered to participate, and the schools volunteered as well. Unlike the reading and math assessment that are mandated, these assessments, this one and several others, are not. And so we are really appreciative of those who volunteered to participate in the assessment.
Questions from the audience? Have there been dance and theater assessments?
Oh, yes. Well, you know, this assessment has a rich history dating back to 1997, and then we administered it again in 2008, and of course 2016 today. And when we started back in 1997, I have to say I was around during that time. The dance was difficult to administer because of the lack of prevalence in the schools around the country at the time. So if you get a chance to go back to the 1997 report, you'll see that we have the items and the tasks there, but no data. We did do theater in 2008, but we weren't able to replicate that again. But we're looking forward to 2024, when we might be able to take advantage of our digitally based assessment techniques, so we can bring these components of the assessment back.
Does anything that we learned from the assessment tell us what narrows achievement gaps? We see that some of them are narrowing and some of them aren't.
John, that's a really good question. We did do a little digging, and what we found is that taking a course inside school or outside activities represents about somewhere between a 10 and a 12-point difference in performance. So we know that when students are exposed to the arts in an academic way or from their own engagement and motivation, they can do better. And that is what happened with the Hispanic students. I was glad to see that the gap was narrowing because the Hispanic students made such improvement. And when we did a little digging into the Hispanic data, we realized that that's exactly what they were doing, taking more courses and having more interests outside of school. So it makes a difference.
That's the time we have today for questions. Thanks, Peggy, and thank you to NCES.
Thank you.
So, I'm pleased to be here today, and we've just heard the results of the first assessment since 2008. Now, in the second half of this program, we're going to switch gears and see some inspiring videos that show how arts education helps to shape our nation's students. The first video highlights contextual data from the Arts Report Card that explore the factors in our classrooms and out in the world that impact arts education. Next, the governing board will debut a series of 4 videos spotlighting arts programs at Hilltop Arts in Tacoma, Washington, Orchard Gardens K-8 Pilot School in Boston, Massachusetts, the Arts-Based School in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, and Red Lake Middle School in Red Lake, Minnesota. So, Let's sit back and watch a new video produced by the governing board that shows that art is everywhere in education if you just know where to look.
Art is everywhere in school if you look closely.
We learn to play instruments in class.
Rehearse for the school play.
And create our own masterpieces.
But art goes beyond the studio. The skills we learn from art can help in other classes too.
Studying music can help us understand math.
Theater and dance make the books we read in English class come to life.
And the visual arts paint a picture of what we learn in history class. Art really is everywhere.
What a great video. It underlines the importance of exploring what factors may enhance student performance. In this case, we're looking at the arts. Now, with help from a number of arts education stakeholders, the governing board identified and profiled 4 schools across the country to learn what their unique arts programs and the impact of arts education on their students are. The first stop on our cross-country tour is Tacoma, Washington, where we visit Hilltop artists to learn about how glass blowing is helping to shape students' appreciation of the arts and to make a difference in their lives.
Oftentimes people come into the program, they look at 12-year-olds blowing glass and they're like, who thought this was a good idea? But if you set the expectation high for these kids, so many of them will reach that expectation and go beyond.
The Hilltop Artist program for glass blowing gives you something to look forward to at the end of the day.
Being involved in arts has really helped me stay focused because I really connected with it and I like it.
We've learned a lot of stuff, most of the stuff I make in here, like cups and bowls, I can use at home, and I've never been able to do that before.
What we do in working in the glass world is a very small community of people. But I think one of the things that this place does is it shows you that there's a larger, role that you can play in the community.
Before I took this glass blowing course, I did not consider myself an artist. I didn't think I was an artist. I didn't like the arts. I thought it was kind of phony. But coming into this class, I really learned how to express myself, and I was able to create things that I truly thought were beautiful. Just from my first gather, I knew it was something that I wanted to identify with and do whatever it takes to continue doing that for the rest of my life.
The program just goes kind of a step beyond what most programs do. Yes, we're an art program teaching 21st century skills in a school environment, but then we're also connecting these kids to all the social programs that they need.
Last year I was going through some stuff and I came here and I felt secure. Art has always been kind of my way of coping through everything, and glass blowing is everything to me now. So.
A lot of the students that I work with, population that I work with, it's a big deal for them to even come to school, to show up to school.
As much as we use glass to hook the kids and to get the kids to come up in here every day, that's not really why we're here. Our goal isn't to turn all of these students into glass artists and, populate the world with more glass art, but it's to, make them better citizens and hopefully find something in themselves that they didn't see before.
So I started the program when I was 12. Growing up, it was really hard. I went through a lot, and glass was always my go-to. This is my home. It's my family. Being that struggling kid, and then now being on the other side and being able to be there for the kids, it's a really cool feeling.
We've become sort of a family in here, and we help them through that tough time of being 12 up to 19 years old. So
it's a really friendly place. All the teachers really nice. It's like another family that you can have.
I think it's made me a better person because I'm excited to go to school.
Feeling like they're creative is an important skill, I think, these days, in order to, with the changing world and the economy and everything the way it is, to be able to constantly, create a problem solver, reinvent yourself. I think that's what art does, and I think it's one of the wonderful skills that it provides these kids. Within a couple of weeks, they're making these beautiful objects that they take home, and their family and their friends see them and are oohing and eyeing and wondering, like, you made that? How did you even do that? That's amazing. So suddenly there's this pride in what they're doing, and they've overcome this fear of the heat and the kind of the intimidation factor of the glass blowing. And now they're actually creating things. And then as they stay involved with the program, they get to pass those skills on to their friends, show their friends what they know, mentor, and all those things. And so you can turn kids on to going to college. You can turn kids on to education in a way that they never thought was possible before. And I think that's the future that these kids have.
Well, that program in Tacoma, Washington reminds us how physical and how technical arts learning can be and how broadly that can affect a student. Joining us on the phone to answer your questions from Hilltop artists is Deputy Director Kate Ward. Kate, talk to us about the powerful influence the arts have on your students. What have you seen firsthand?
Hi, thank you so much for having me today. What I have seen firsthand with our students is that art meets them where they're at. Middle school is a challenging time as you are, as Dr. Peggy Carr pointed out, learning how to understand your world and how to understand yourself. And art gives students an opportunity to explore that, to be creative. We see with glass arts that things break. Things don't always go as planned, and students have a real opportunity to learn creativity, problem solving, teamwork, and resilience. And these are life skills that students take with them wherever they go.
Thanks, Kate. We'll talk with you again in a moment. Next, we visit Boston, Massachusetts, and head to Orchard Gardens K-8 pilot school, where they're developing the artistic abilities of students through the top-notch dance program.
Before I came here, I went to 2 schools that didn't have any arts programs, and it was the most boring experience of my life. But then I came here, and then Mr. Jordan was awesome, cool dance teacher, and then I was like, oh my God, this is really fun. And then I just developed a love for dance.
Dance has changed the culture of this school. If you look at the top dancers in this school, I guarantee you their grades are really high. The younger kids, they look up to that.
My family always said that I had to do dance classes because every time I listen to music, I just want to dance. And it's a cool opportunity because I thought I wouldn't be able to do it here in the United States.
Our school is founded on a deeply held belief that the arts are an essential part of every child's education, because we've seen it in our turnaround story. So we were one of the lowest performing schools in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts in 2010. We now have some of the highest growth rates in the state.
Dance is always what makes me want to come here, especially when I have a first period. I'm so excited because I know I just get to go and dance and get all my energy up before I have to go to class.
I feel like it makes my brain work in the morning, and it really helps me out with the classes on the rest of the day because I feel like I'm more active
Being able to influence young minds through dance, especially teaching in a K-8 where you can have a kid in kindergarten and then see them rise and learn. I don't know, I live for it. I mean, I would basically tell parents, this is something that will change your child's life for the better.
We definitely have students who are emerging in our classrooms as leaders and making the art their own. So it's pretty exciting to see those leaders emerge and then see other students follow.
I tell them all the time, why do we have to critique art? Why do we have to talk about somebody's artwork? Because it's going to help them with their presentation. It's going to help them be able to engage in some kind of debate or any other conversation.
And those skills definitely are the same skills that the science teacher wants in their room when you're inventing something and collaborating on a team for an experiment.
So we credit our arts programming with our excellent attendance rate and with our ever-growing academic achievement rates. And because we're able to see outcomes year after year, it's not something that's hard to keep people engaged in because it's visible, and our kids can clearly articulate what the arts mean to them.
Well, one, it gives me motivation, and two, I feel like if dance can be this fun, then so can everything else.
A lot of educators, a lot of people in general, they think that the arts are just enjoying yourself, but it incorporates everything. It teaches you about life.
When you're doing like partner dancing, especially duets, it's the most important thing is to communicate with each other, but without talking.
You have to learn how to rely on each other because we're always running on stage, and you have to trust the other that like you're not gonna run into them.
I think that's huge for students to be working on right now because so many of the jobs out there are about collaboration and creation, and when you are in middle school, your communication skills are not necessarily fully developed, and instead of quitting or giving up and having tears, they learn how to persevere through those challenges that they face.
Before I started dancing, if I try to dance or do anything like that, I would be really shy. So that's what it's basically taught me, to not be shy anymore when I dance or anything else.
I think that's what arts does. It breaks down all the other stuff that people put on humanity. It just breaks it down, and then you're just who you are.
Time about how low self-efficacy results in kids dropping out, how they don't believe that they can succeed in school, and the confidence that was radiating from those dancers was really impressive. Joining us on phone to answer your questions from Orchard Gardens is Principal Megan Webb. Megan, how has this dance program enriched students' lives and improved performance in other subjects?
Well, good morning. Thank you so much for including us in this program. I think the video in a lot of ways speaks volumes and speaks for itself about how this program has impacted our students. I think of it in terms of broad skills of motivation, perseverance, and persistence that you really saw, as you said, shining through in those students and in their teachers as well. I think our students are motivated to come to school, first of all, by the incredible dance and arts programming that we offer. We've risen from 89% attendance before arts implementation to 96% and higher school-wide. And so getting kids here is a huge piece of the puzzle. And then also you saw in Wilmer's statement at the end, our seventh grade student who said he was shy, he was reserved, and then dance showed him how to come out of his shell, how to be successful, how to take on a risk and succeed, which is a skill that translates into every single class and creates leaders out of students who might otherwise kind of shy away from new opportunities and new challenges.
Thanks, Megan. We'll talk again in a moment. Now we head to Winston-Salem, North Carolina, to the Arts-Based School, where students are given the chance to flex their creative muscles through multiple arts programs, including music and theater.
When children come to kindergarten, they're all acting, singing, dancing, and painting. And every parent says, "Oh, my child just loves art."
And when you start that from a very, very young age, then it becomes the natural mode and the natural way of learning.
So why would you sit them down when they get onto 7th grade and say, stop using those languages you've developed and be quiet and sit still and listen, and we'll teach you something.
Arts here did help me with the other side, not this shy person, but an outspoken person, and it helps with speech and a lot of different shows too.
We've seen many kids blossom when they get into this environment.
I've just excelled in my learning since day one.
It gives them a sense of pride and a sense of place and a sense of value.
It's really helped me a lot, like become more bold as a person, I guess.
We don't integrate everything. Where it doesn't make sense, we don't do it. But there's enough of it that there's change and an opportunity for problem solving and creativity that keeps them stimulated. They're not just taking in an adult point of view. They get to solve the problems themselves and then express them using something other than just a pencil or a computer.
Having an art class kind of lets you develop a little bit more, and it seems intimidating at first, but if it's something that you do like twice a week or once a week, then it doesn't seem like it's some hard thing that nobody can achieve.
We also are highly connected to our community in that we bring in guest artists and we want to expose the students to the ways that artists work.
A special guest came in today to talk to us about improvising in music.
Art is an essential class because self-expression is essential, and especially to kids who are learning these new social circles and learning how to navigate the world of friends and bad influences sometimes and good influences.
One of my jobs is to help create what we call a living textbook production, which is a production where a lot of different topics are incorporated into a final show of some kind that we share with parents.
So I'm going to write a piece that the 6th graders will dance to. And their dance will be them acting out states of matter. So acting out change in matter, adding energy, taking away energy.
As the students are doing this, first of all, they're beginning to put together and connect these ideas. Secondly, we're working on it for a presentation. So they are understanding that they have to make it clear enough that they can convey this information to an audience.
People who are really good at math, they play with it. They love it. It's fun. And we're trying to figure out how to bridge that gap with our kids. We want them to love math. We want them to think it's fun.
All of the same steps that are used in creative processes of any sort are the same processes that students need in the writing process, the scientific process. It's coming up with ideas, organizing those ideas in a meaningful way, refining those ideas through rehearsal, and then be able to publish, present, or perform those ideas.
We want just as much to inspire kids to love and appreciate and participate in the arts if they don't go into the arts as a profession. But that's the audience. And that's also how we express our humanity. It's how we express our current culture.
Having arts classes here has kind of like opened up more possibilities for me to do stuff outside of school. So it feels like it kind of exposes a lot more stuff that I would see.
I mean, arts-based here has gotten me really involved in stuff. I think that they have improved my life. And I'm going to be going back to my 3rd grade teachers and saying, thank you so much for teaching me this.
It's a great reminder of how powerful it is to engage the whole child, mind and body and community connections with the school. Arts learning pays off in that way. And we see a theme here of kids saying they like going to school. They want to go to school. They want to learn because they're fully engaged. Joining us on the phone to answer your questions from the arts-based school is Arts Director Mary Siebert. Mary, what skills do you think the students learn from these art classes that ultimately help prepare them for post-secondary education and for the workforce?
Well, hello, and thanks for inviting the participation of the arts-based school. I've been very inspired by those other schools, too. I have a friend who is a biochemistry professor at Wake Forest University. He reports that modern students arrive at college able to ace tests, but they often have tunnel vision. While they're well prepared for science, they struggle with imagination. They are great at memorizing facts and answering questions, but they lack skills in critical thinking, creativity, and communication. These are the strengths that the arts develop. Leonardo da Vinci, Albert Einstein, Steve Jobs all maintained that creativity was critical to success in science and math. As my friend at Wake Forest says, we need our young people to think creatively. We've got big problems to solve in our world, and we struggle to communicate even within our own culture, probably right up the hill from you. The world is changing. We need to absorb, understand, appreciate, and incorporate multiple cultures and viewpoints. The arts help us comprehend and bridge cultures. They help us understand one another. They help create communicators and original thinkers. Math and science without creativity are limited and lead to redundancy instead of breakthroughs.
Thanks, Mary. We'll talk again soon. Our fourth and final stop on this crisscross country tour leads us to Red Lake, Minnesota, where the middle school students and faculty use the visual arts to connect and engage with their culture and community.
The Red Lake Nation is a sovereign nation. It's closed off. It has its own government system. It has its own police force. There's something very beautiful about that and positive, but on the other end, a lot of our kids don't get a lot of exposure to the outside world. We have signed on with the President's Committee of Arts and Humanities in their National Turnaround Arts program. Over the course of the last 3 years, that's enabled us to bring in artists, to work with our kids in different areas of dance, spoken word, some hip hop, painting, and it's brought in artists from Arizona, the Twin Cities area, Colorado, and they bring in a new perspective for our kids and a whole new energy.
At Red Lake, I participate in the plays here. When I was in the play, I was pretty nervous and I was still self-conscious about myself and opening up to people. But then when I did it more, it was awesome and people notice me now.
We want to integrate arts into our classroom with the standards as our guideline. We want students to learn the same thing, it's just sometimes they're showing their learning in a different way. So we don't want just art in the art room, we want art in all of our content areas, science, math, social studies, language arts, to enhance the student learning and really enhance engagement in learning.
I think I'm getting better at teamwork and working with other people, communicating.
The quieter, more artistic kids have really been able to show off what they know and be real leaders throughout the classes with their arts, with their talents of drawing and writing and singing and acting.
Being creative is kind of you taking control of how you like things and the way you like to express yourself in a way.
Art is important in itself, but for us, having a cultural tie to it is extremely important for us because we want them to have a sense of identity in who they are as Anishinaabe people. Knowing that the Native American culture is at a critical point where you don't want to lose sense of that culture.
One reason we do snow snakes is because of where we teach. We teach on a reservation, and we need to honor that, and we need to honor the students' culture and tradition and try to bring in activities that engages them in their culture and also try to bring in other people from the community to help with those activities. So the first thing we do is we have an elder come in and tell the story of the snow snakes. And then we go out into the woods and they cut their own snow snakes. They whittle the sticks on their own. And then they get to get really creative where they design and paint the snow snake and make it unique to them.
I was trying to dedicate this stick to something that was important to me. And I came up with the idea to dedicate it to the LGBTQ plus community.
In our mural works that we've done, they're done by local artists and artists that have a foundation in the Anishinaabe culture. And they all enjoy the opportunity to work with, not only work with the artists, but to have their work on the wall.
When I came to school, I was amazed at how all these, artwork on the walls. And I felt like I, belong here.
Art is a reflection of your community, and in school really provides a heartbeat to your school. It provides it with life, flavor. It creates passion, a passion for learning. Since we've made art a focus in our school, we've had a reduction in discipline referrals of over 40%. Our enrollment has increased 11%. Our state standard test scores have risen. It's really just checked all the indicators for us personally as a Red Lake Middle School to show nothing but positive influences on both our kids and in the community.
Art has really changed my life. It helped me through a lot of things. It made me a better person.
Well, I want to see that video again, just to see how the environment has been transformed by art. Every wall, the student work and the community artists' work, that sense of ownership of the learning situation and identification with the local people and the artistic expressions just really came across visually there. Joining us on the phone to answer your questions from Red Lake Middle School is Principal Mark Benson. Mark, how is blending the
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Hi. How has blending the students' culture and heritage into their art classes and projects influenced their learning and academic achievement?
Well, as we began to focus more on incorporating art and art-based instructional strategies into our core content classrooms, the cultural component to that just was a natural fit for us. Blending culture and art, it's truly made instruction more engaging for our kids. It's made the content more relevant for our students. It has really helped them provide them with a sense of identity. I believe as educators, we play a vital role in inspiring our kids to push themselves to find that identity and a sense of pride within them. And the art itself has lended itself to be an outlet for our kids to speak their inner voice. The cultural component to that has provided a sense of Native American pride in our students, and the two combined together has really transformed the culture of our school, the sense of pride in our school, and the identity of our students.
Thanks, Mark. Stick with us. Art is everywhere and takes many forms. We hope this quick glimpse into impactful arts programs across the country made you want to learn more about them. Our representatives from each of these great schools are still on the phone with us to answer your questions and provide additional insights. So joining us again are Kate, Megan, Mary, and Mark. Welcome back. Thank you to everyone who submitted questions in advance. We'll answer as many questions as we can in the time we have remaining. If you have a question, please approach the microphone and again provide your name, organization, and question. Let's get started. Questions to any of our four schools?
Hi.
Tell us who you are.
I'm Jennifer Mayo. I'm an Einstein Fellow with the NASA Office of Education, and I'm the Science TOSA, Teacher on Special Assignment from Portland Public Schools, where we have a lot of arts integration. And so I'm wondering if you guys can talk specifically about working with content area teachers and how their art skills are built up so that arts is, in fact, everywhere in the building and not just in the arts classroom.
Thanks.
This is Mary. I can speak to that at the arts-based school. We provide teachers with a period a week every week of school where they rotate through the art specialists and attend with their students. So they learn what the art specialists are teaching their kids. And then we also meet on a rotating basis with all the art specialists and the grade level teachers so we can brainstorm together how to cross-integrate so that the content teachers include the arts or use them, and our art specialists include content.
Yes? I just saw a line of people, and then I looked up and they disappeared. Well, I have plenty of questions. Go ahead, Ayana.
Hi, Ayana Hudson. I'm with the National Endowment for the Arts. And this question specifically is for Kate at Hilltop Artist. I heard students in the video talk about how much they enjoy coming to class now because of their participation in the glassblowing class. And I wonder if you can talk a little bit about the relationship or the partnership between Hilltop Artist and the school district, and whether or not students participating in your program receive school credit for the classes that they take.
Yes, so we have an incredible partnership with Tacoma Public Schools. Our daytime classes at Jason Lee Middle School and Wilson High School are elective classes that they get credit for. We've also been able to partner with local high schools when we have students come back as TAs, and they will get credit for being with us in the daytime classes. They will also get high school credit for contributing in that way. And it's really one of the things that makes a huge difference for us is our partnership with Tacoma Public Schools, which is an innovative school district that's really working to be creative in their solutions. And so we've been partnering with them for 23 years. And from there, we now have a School of the Arts, and we have a Science and Math Institute school. They are really exploring innovative ways to increase graduation rate, and they've seen results.
Here's a question. Tell us who you are.
Good morning, Mario Rosero. I oversee all the education programs here at the Kennedy Center. Thanks to all of our guests on the phone, and this could go to any one of you, but I'm just curious what assessment strategies you have in place to measure impact and outcomes of arts learning, whether that be within the arts, on other content areas, or even social-emotional behavioral. Thank you.
I can take that one. For the Red Lake Middle School, our focus has been predominantly on leveraging the arts to meet the needs of our students socially and emotionally. We believe that having our kids in the right state of mind is going to help them learn. Just looking at the baseline data that of attendance rates, discipline referrals, we really have shown a reduction in discipline referrals with our students. We've shown an increase both in attendance rates and in enrollment rates, which to me shows signs of the community really seeing the value of what arts has done for our school and what it's done to change the environment in our school. A byproduct of that is, if you look at our both our state standards and our state MCA scores, they're on the rise every year since we've implemented art into our core content areas. I feel that it's really had a big impact on how our students feel about themselves.
I can answer this as well. This is Megan Webb from Orchard Gardens in Boston. I would agree. So we are a large district school. We have almost 1,000 students. And so we measure impact largely on comprehensive terms, as Mark described. So I talked a bit about our attendance rates and how they've really skyrocketed since implementation of our arts integration programming. But we also watch, as Mark said, our standardized assessments, our state tests, as well as our social emotional data, so in the form of student suspension rates, student surveys, looking at how students are feeling about coming to school. And all of those data points have increased significantly in the 7 years that we've invested in the arts in this way. And I would say in more recent years, the last couple of years, our arts team has taken a more data-centered approach to their own work, trying to measure how many students have the opportunity to perform, whether that's on stage, through displaying their artwork, through doing choral presentations at a family night, and really measuring the opportunity to perform and how successful they're being as instructors in providing students with those opportunities. And then on a much longer term view, we look at how many of our students are matriculating to what we would consider high quality high schools, because to us that's the long-term trajectory impact. How are we impacting students' lives? And all of these data points feed into kind of that, for us, that final data point for our 8th graders. I think it's also, this is an exciting movement because, as we all know, working in schools, what gets measured is what's valued. And so making the case through data that arts has real impact is incredibly important to sustaining our programming.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Jeff Poulin with Americans for the Arts. My question, at first glance, if you look at the NAEP data, it shows that students from suburban communities outperform those in rural and urban schools. And it's no doubt that these examples have achieved great success in arts learning. So my question is, for the schools that are not located in suburban communities, what decisions have you made as school leaders that has really made the difference for student success in arts learning?
This is Mary at the arts-based school. Winston-Salem is not a large city, but we're located in the middle of it. And we've always been an arts-based school since our inception, so we haven't had the opportunity to demonstrate change. But what we do that I think is remarkable, gosh, I lost track of the question all of a sudden. What was it again?
Jeff?
Good thing I wrote this down. What decisions?
Oh, I know what I was.
Great, you got it. You got it.
Integrating the arts into other content is a powerful way for people from all different walks of life to be able to experience the arts. And one of the resources that we relied on, or that many schools in our area rely on, is an organization called A+ Schools out of Raleigh, North Carolina. They're now expanding into 7 states and even into Europe. There are resources like that that are not expensive. And if a school doesn't have let's say the space or the finances or the staff to teach discrete arts, it's possible to train your staff to integrate the arts, and that starts to expose your children in an inner city school to the arts even when there are not additional resources available.
I also think, this is Megan again from Boston, that districts have a large role to play in making arts available to students everywhere. And we're part of the Boston Public Schools, and our status allows us to use our funding in a way that we see fit. So I don't get any more funding or less funding than another, neighboring Boston Public School, but I have more autonomy as a principal over how that funding is allocated. And I think a district that puts that level of trust in its principals also puts the power to provide robust arts and an enriching curriculum to all students in the hands of principals. So at a district level, I would recommend looking at Boston as an example of that.
Good morning, Peter Milligan with the Wolf Trap Foundation for the Performing Arts. My question is twofold, if I may be so bold. The first one is really, I think, directed more at Megan and Mary. We saw in your videos, you talk about kindergarten research. There's plenty of research that points to the importance of starting both arts learning and other creative outlets of learning at an early age, and that's setting them up for future academic success. So I wonder if you could provide a little bit more detail about how early age children are getting exposed to the arts in your schools. And then my second question is more for everyone. Curious as to how your classroom teachers, outside of the arts, your science teachers, your math teachers, how receptive they are to your vision of being an arts-focused school and how you're setting them up to be stewards of your arts vision.
Well, at the arts-based school, every student at every grade level studies the arts, visual art, music, drama, and dance all the way through. And so it's not an elective, and it becomes just part of school, both because it's integrated into the classroom and because they take art for art's sake. The teachers also train in integrating the arts into their instruction, so the kindergartners sort of eat, breathe, live through the arts. They do large productions with members of the community, and it's just an ongoing flow. By the time they reach 5th grade, they are so confident performing in front of one another, sharing visual art, that they can do masterful performances because they're completely courageous.
I can speak briefly structurally to the way that students are exposed to the arts at Orchard Gardens, is they experience all of our different arts offerings between kindergarten and 3rd grade. And by the time they're entering 4th grade, they do start to elect into specialized courses. So they'll elect a performing arts course as well as a visual arts course, which some students from 4th through 8th stick with the same 2 courses and really become experts in those courses. Some of their personalities lend them to want to try everything, and so we allow that as well, so that it can be a really organic and inspiring part of their curriculum.
Good morning. My name is Susan Auchen. I'm with the National Assembly of State Arts Agencies. My question is really for anyone who wants to take it. Can you speak to the impact on students with IEPs or students with disabilities with your arts learning programs?
I can take that. This is Kate from Hilltop Artists. We work with students at all different skill levels, and we have seen at times that art and being able to move and refocus can help students if they're struggling. We have students that they were considered to not be able to succeed in the standard academic courses, and they would get frustrated and they would be throwing tables, but we'd bring them here and we would, at those moments of frustration, say, okay, let's just go make something and take a break, and then they'd be able to go back to their classwork and just have a renewed energy to take that on. And we've worked with students on the autism spectrum. We really work with students to meet them where they're at, and build those opportunities for belonging and connection.
I really second that philosophy of meeting children where they are at. That's how the arts work. and you're able to teach at many different levels at once. So if you have a child with special needs, you can alter the script, or you can allow them to work at whatever depth they're suited to at the time.
This is Ken Skshesh, representing the State Education Agency Directors of Arts Education. In broad strokes, how are the successful arts curricula specific to your schools influenced by and aligned with state and national standards?
This is Mark Benson from the Red Lake Middle School. We use the arts in all our core content areas, and it allows for our teachers to still teach the state standards in their classrooms, but allows our students to express their learning or show their learning utilizing the arts. So it becomes not in addition to, but a part of the teaching and a part of showing their mastery of the state standards.
Hi, this is Ken Elpis from the University of Maryland, College Park. I'm interested specifically if any of you can talk to some of the strategies that your teachers within the arts use to systematically assess student learning, specifically in the artistic processes of creating, performing, and responding, and to a lesser extent connecting, that are contemplated in the National Core Arts Standards.
This is Mary. I think sometimes, specifically when you're teaching something like reading music, it can be difficult for the teachers to figure out how to incorporate the creative aspect of the requirements. And improvisation is one of the tools that I think is the most useful when it comes to that. But also, if you develop improvisatory skills in acting or dance or music, or visual art, and you continue to use them, you can develop performances together based on those skills. We do that through script development, even at first grade and second grade, where the kids improvise the script and then we save what's valuable, and that becomes the solid script, for example.
Hello, Jim Palmerty, Educational Theater Association. This is a question for all of you. I had wondered what the perceived community impact has been on your arts-based program. In other words, parents and other community members. Has it prompted more involvement among the community to the activities of the school, particularly around the arts?
Yes, this is Mark Benson from the Red Lake Middle School. We've used the arts to really bring parents in. We've had a long history of struggling to get parent involvement. We used it to create a more welcoming environment for our parents. We've had them be a part of helping to create artistic displays in the school. And we've utilized plays and musicals as dinner theaters for our parents, and it's really had a positive response in creating a more of a partnership between the community and the schools. And one other project that I wanted to highlight real quick is we used a resident artist to work with our kids on a mural in our school, and a byproduct of that is we went out into the community and took a bus stop that was run down and brought it back to the school, refurbished it, and had that artist work with our kids to put on a similar floral pattern and brought it back out into the community. And the response from our community when they came to the school was magic. It really has allowed us to be, the school community has really reached out to the community, and the arts have made that a big helping hand.
I agree with that completely. I'll also add that our school is over 60% English language learners. And another powerful aspect of the arts in bringing families into school is that you don't need to speak a specific language in order to understand and be moved by your children's artwork or by art in general. So families by far come to our arts-based engagement events much more frequently than they come to other events. And I think families who are recent immigrants and who are still learning English and who sometimes feel intimidated to come to a school building or for another reason feel very, very welcome and very comfortable coming for a show or an art gallery. And then that starts conversations and that brings families back in the door. And that creates a community that otherwise we would struggle to create.
Hi, my name is Shanae Bird. I'm a professional hip hop artist. I'm also an educator. I'm here representing the Sitar Arts Center, the after school arts program. And I wanted to ask anyone who's willing to answer, how often do you all connect with after school programs, if at all? And do you see, hold on a second, do you see areas of growth related to connecting in school instruction and what's happening in after school programs?
This is Kate from Hilltop Artists. We have after-school programs as a part of our offerings. We have 9 different programs, including after-school for middle school and high school students. And we also have summer programs and evening. So we definitely see the connection. We work with students from ages 12 to 20, and sometimes we have students that start with us when they are 12 and they stay with us until they are 20. And so to build skills over many years, build relationship with students over many years has been a critical part of our success. And we have a outreach manager as well that works with our students and works with their families, and being able to have students in our daytime classes and identify whether or not they would benefit, that they would truly benefit from being in more of our programs is something that we have an opportunity to do because we have so many different offerings.
Yes, this is Mark. I just kind of wanted to piggyback off of that. Just to kind of give you guys perspective, our school is a very remote area. Our nearest McDonald's is roughly about 45 miles away. So our after-school programming is a vital resource for our kids, and we use it to leverage some of our programming. We've created a performance club after school, an art club after school. We utilize it to do rehearsals for our musicals and plays. And we've also brought in resident artists to do some photography classes and mural work with our kids. All of those components come back into the regular core curriculum throughout our school. It gives kids a lot of pride and confidence to be more engaged in their work.
Thank you. This is Sunil Iyengar, Director of Research from the National Endowment for the Arts. If you don't mind, National Endowment for the Arts double dipping. We had another question earlier. Just to say that I really enjoyed the panel discussion and the videos. I wanted to ask, I was struck by Megan's comment about the autonomy at the principal level and how that can help guide the uptake of arts education in a school. I'm wondering if we heard some benefits about attendance, benefits associated with enrollment in other courses, and of course there have been talk about academic achievement in other courses related to the presence of arts and education. Do any of you see any cost data or use of cost data in this, in making the case? In other words, apart from sort of the benefits to the community or attendance data that you can point to, have you thought about some of the cost elements of the work you provide and how to position that to in a comparative way with other kinds of programming across your schools?
This is Megan again. I'm not sure if this is exactly the question that you're asking, but when we think about how we're allocating resources. And of course, among those resources is money, but also we think about time. We think about the structure of our day. As a school, we try to think of the long-term benefits for our students. I think in education, we often think very short-term, right? We want to get the standardized test scores that year. We want to see it year over year. We want to see it immediately. And we want to see that as well. But we believe in it. We have the luxury of being a K-8, where we have many students for 10 plus years. But we believe if we invest students in education more broadly and in the power of education and in wanting to be at school and in believing in their own skills, that will ultimately serve them better in the long term than spending extra time, extra money solely on math and English language arts, because those are the tested subjects. So I think the autonomy for me allows me to make that decision for my school, and then also to be accountable for all the other pieces, right? We're still accountable to state measures, and we take those very seriously, but we also can build our own case based on our beliefs about what is most powerful for students, and then see that borne out over time. So we see in our data that our 8th graders outperform most 8th graders in the state. It takes a little bit longer for them to get there than some of our neighboring schools who get quicker year over year standardized test growth results. So I don't know if that's what you were talking about. When we think about cost and benefit, I try to think long term, and I'm grateful that I work in a school and in a district that gives me the autonomy to be able to do that, and then to be held accountable for the long-term results as well.
We've completed our time for questions. I want to thank everybody for their very thoughtful participation. And thank you to Kate and Megan and Mary and Mark for your insights and participation. Today we've had the chance to hear the results from the nation's report card, 2016 Arts, and see how 4 schools are using arts programs to enrich their students' educational experiences. I was reminded today that Ernest Boyer, the former U.S. Commissioner of Education, talked about the arts, about visual art, music, dance, and drama together as an arts symbol system, like words and numbers are symbols that students use as a language to learn about everything else. And because the arts, words, and numbers represent the objects and experience of the world in unique and different ways, when you don't give students literacy, numeracy, and artistry to learn with, some students won't succeed in school at all, and no students will achieve their greatest potential. I was also reminded by our inspiring videos that arts learning doesn't happen in a school without the personal commitment of visionary superintendents, principals, curriculum supervisors, teachers, parents, and school board leaders. We all have a part to play in order for students to learn in and through the arts. On behalf of the governing board, we thank you for attending and tuning into today's event. Remember to join others on Twitter in talking about the report card results. Remember to use the hashtag NAEP, N-A-E-P. If you aren't already, please follow the governing board on Twitter and Facebook to stay informed of our latest news. You can also visit nationsreportcard.gov to see the full arts report and take a closer look and explore the data. If you go to nagb.gov, N-A-G-B.gov, the governing board's website, you can find even more materials, including a news release and the frameworks that guide the NAEP assessments. In a few days, the videos shown today will be available there, and today's webcast will be available in a few weeks. For our guests here at the Kennedy Center, we'd like to invite you to join us for a tour. If you're interested, please convene in the back of the gallery following the conclusion of the event. Thank you. It's been a pleasure to be your moderator, and that concludes our event for today.